I use the principle of 15% against the 85%. In democracy coming from the West, it is a minority that rules the majority and not the majority that rules the minority. It doesn't work like that. So the 15% against the 85% simply means that when you hold 85% of a people's natural reserve, that automatically means that you have kept 85% of its population under abject poverty. And then the 15% now becomes the government which you have endorsed with power, loans, aid, weapons to do what? To repress the 85%. And that is why you realize that in the small economies we have today in Africa, it's only few people who benefit from it. That is what I call the 15%. And the 15% is the one that works in line with the Western nation to exploit the 85%, because what they get out of Africa, it is a targeted budget of 85% that they intend to exploit from the African people. So the 85% of the population that live in abject poverty, either you join the government to also have a small share of that exploit. If you go into the private sector, you don't survive. And that's why you realize that they talk about the private sector, because they understand that most of the rebellion and the terrorism and all of that is coming up. It's coming up from that 85% who have been in a particular condition for a long period of time, and now they are rebelling against their governments. How do they do it? These guys are smart, but they are not too smart enough. They do it in such a way that they understand that if you keep a government exploiting the government for a very long period, at one point the government might rebel against you. Right. So what they do is that they understand that the 85% has also been in that particular condition for a very long period. They arm you with weapons. You go against your government. The government now loses its vision to come and attack you or to rebel against you and start fighting against themselves. It makes them meat and their exploit very easy for Africa. And that is why we believe and understand that what you saw happening in Central Africa, Chad, Cameroon, name them, it is all the West behind them. We don't produce weapons. The weapons we saw in Nigeria, in the hands of the headsmen, the rebels, the jihadis, the Boko Haram, those are sophisticated weapons that only those people who keep weapons at the level of the IMF as their own natural reserves. And what's in many Western nations, as their own natural reserve, they keep ammunition, weapons. That is what they do. So they give our government enough weapons to do what? To crack down the 85%, because they understand that it is impossible for 15% to rule 85%, only if they have power. And that is how they give them that power to repress the 85% so that the goods or the raw materials keep getting to the port.
Right. African leaders are definitely already conscious of this whole process of France's means, or the strategies that France is using as a means of manipulating African continent. So why go to a summit when it's not beneficial to the continent? It is only for debt to leave?
That's a very good question. What we need to do in Africa is that they are taking natural resources, and those natural resources have to cross the ports. That's the simple truth. And they use our government in doing that safe passage. So change cannot come from our leaders. Change can only come from the 9 to 1 billion African youths who will rise up, not only them, but in favor with their diasporans, Africans that are living abroad. It should be a worldwide global protest and uprising for the world to understand how Europe and America has been surviving and how China is entering Africa today. It's all for our natural resources. Right. Their kids and their future cannot be at the expense of the African population. This is an abuse of human rights, and this has to stop. And this is what we want the world to know, and we want Macron to understand that the system which they had built many years ago, his forefathers that are still favoring them today, does not mean that the Africans are not coming to understand what is happening. And we are saying that it will take this population and not our leaders. And that is why you realize that in most of our independence, many of the presidents who got their independence had to negotiate it. There were treaties, there were agreements. If you will have your politics, our business arrangement, existing business arrangements should not be jeopardized. Make sure that you protect our interests. It's clear and simple. And those are the interests that are affecting the lives and the destiny and the future of the African people. Africans today are living in Africa as though they are foreigners because they don't see and find their future in their own country. While Macron will come to Cameroon, come to Africa and goes back as a billionaire. Chinese will come here, they go back as billionaires. Russians will come here, they go back as billionaires. Americans will come here, they go back as billionaires. But Africans living in Africa are instead entering into abject poverty as we speak.